Hello gamers, how's it all going ladies and gentlemen? If you are somebody that loves to use the internet like me, well ladies and gentlemen, the internet is turning into a place where I'm pretty sure at some point we're going to have actual border checkpoints, and we're going to be needing to provide IDs, facial scans, you name it, just to access actual parts of the internet. Now before we start this video, I'm going to be talking about something known as the Kids Online Safety and Privacy Act. Now, I do care about the well-being of children, okay? But anytime a politician introduces any law that's usually about protecting kids, it's always about sneaking in something, especially when it comes to the internet, maybe a bit privacy busting. Now, to give you an idea, the internet is a vastly different place from when I was a teenager. When I was younger, the only social media network that I knew of was like MySpace. And then of course, by the time I got to high school, it became Facebook. And by the time I got to my senior year, it became Instagram. And then when I got to college, I really didn't follow any form of social media. In fact, even back then, I think all I had was a Facebook. My Instagram has since been taken down because guess what? I've been impersonating this guy called Mudahar on the internet, okay? You guys might know who he is. Yeah, I apparently was impersonating that dude, okay? Wild shit. But for me, any form of like these social medias where I'm uploading things and sharing them around, it was not something that I ever got into. But it's different for kids these days, okay? For instance, I have younger family members in my life who literally I see them on their phones. They're on things like Snapchat. They're on things like TikTok. I mean, literally the other day I saw a new social media app known as Be Real. It's not new, but it's something that I saw for the first time. So kids these days have access to so many different forms of social media services, and that's not even getting into things like Discord. I mean, even Xbox and PlayStation or Steam, or really a lot of these like gaming platforms, are also in of themselves full-on social media platforms. And it's caused the government to create laws like the Kids Online Safety and Privacy Act in order to stop some serious bad things from happening to them. So I want to kind of go over this just really quickly. I want to rip the band-aid off. Now, obviously, when you look in the definitions, one of the things that I find super duper interesting about this is when I look up the term virtual private network. Now, you don't have to be somebody that follows my channel to know what a VPN is. If you follow any YouTuber, you probably know a VPN is that one program you use to make yourself look like you're sitting in another part of the world, okay? So you, as an American, can pretend to be somebody from, I don't know, Pakistan through a VPN, or you can pretend to be from France, or really any country. And what this does is if countries have geo-blocks or restrictions on content, you can just pretend to be from another country and access blocked content, okay? Is a certain television show you're watching blocked in your region because of licensing issues? Just pretend you're from somewhere else, bro. At the comfort of your own home, you can pretend to be from anywhere. It's wild shit. So anyways, inside this entire law, I only ever saw this mentioned once, underneath the actual exception section for the covered platforms. So by exceptions, they say the term covered platforms does not include, all the way down to this section, a virtual private network or similar service that exists solely to route internet traffic between locations. Now this comes pretty much at the crux later as I talk in these videos, but you know, looking at another bill or another situation that's happening, for anybody that doesn't know, people in Florida will not have access to the hub January 1st, 2025, okay? Meaning that if you're a Floridian, your access to the hub is effectively locked behind a use of a driver ID. Now in this case, the hub is just completely pulling out, okay? They don't want to even service Floridians, which again, you know, people can look at as a little weird because, hey, if somebody from Florida really wanted to access the hub, all they have to do is provide their driver's license. And I'm sure some Coomer who's really dedicated to that will just go do that. But then again, maybe the hub wants to leave because they realize that they're ultimately going to lose traffic in that area anyways if they're competing against sites that aren't even hosted in North America or the United States. None of these laws prevent websites that are like outside, you know, websites that operate in places like Russia from sending their traffic. I mean, the internet is wired much differently than these politicians think, right? The internet can be circumvented. The internet can be this free bastion where you can load up things like Tor and access the internet without any government agency snooping in or controlling what you watch on the internet. Now, let's say that a website is blocked in your area. Nothing stops you from going to any VPN, and even if the VPN isn't hosted in the United States, this one, for instance, is known as mulvad.vpn. If you want to anonymously purchase this, all you have to do is go over here to an account, make an account which produces a randomly generated number, so you don't even need to do emails or passwords. You then basically add money into this account or time, and you can add it through something known as Monero, which is an anonymous cryptocurrency. So you create this one-time payment address, and you might be wondering, how do I get this cryptocurrency without the big bad government knowing what I do? Well, through services like KYC Not Me, which is a registry of actual cryptocurrency services where you can exchange crypto for actual money. For instance, this service like Bisq allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin that you can then convert to Monero privately and securely. And again, if you go down, they'll pretty much say they don't verify your identity. They're decentralized, safe, and private. And of course, you might be like, well, Muto, why are you teaching people how to circumvent or bypass these rules? It's because I believe in something known as privacy, and I believe in something known as freedom, especially when you're accessing the last bastion of freedom on the internet. There's plenty of good case uses for using something like Monero as a cryptocurrency. For instance, if you want to save money by going to Mental Outlaws merch store base.win, you can save money, from my understanding, using Monero. It's kind of an incentive for using a privacy-focused cryptocurrency. Honestly, in a world even with digital currencies, you shouldn't necessarily be fucking forced to have people look through your entire blockchain if you don't want to. If you want privacy, I believe all human beings are entitled to it. And this is technology that allows you to at least keep your personal transactions private. Maybe you don't want somebody snooping into what merch you're buying, maybe what creator you're supporting, maybe what company you're supporting. Maybe you're worried that a government regime does not want you to purchase certain items. There's a lot of reasons, good reasons, why somebody actually cares about their privacy. I think the best reason alone is, hey, when I come home, I lock my fucking door so I don't have a government agent sitting inside my house looking at every single thing I do. That's fucking creepy, okay? We should be long past the era of government surveillance into our personal private lives. But anyways, to go back to the Kids Online Privacy Act, looking into these kind of laws, it's good laws on paper because I really do think that the world of social media is different for children, right? Now, obviously, I can understand when, adult companies need to be restricting their content for children, and maybe they should be doing a better job at it, right? Like maybe before a kid should access the hub, maybe any user should be providing some level of credit card verification or something that takes users' privacy into account, but reasonably filters out actual adults, right? I think it's OnlyFans that does it the best way. You make an account and you still need a credit card in order to actually subscribe and engage with adult people on the platform. I think some laws, some restrictions are okay. All right, it's kind of like, when you go do online gambling, you still need to have some restrictions, right? Like if you're going to a legitimate online gambling enterprise, you have to provide KYC, you have to provide actual verification before you can put money in. Unfortunately, there still exist a lot of these online platforms where people gamble using CSGO currency, CSGO skins. And of course, if you look very carefully, people are constantly putting money into these. These are very, very active, very highly profitable actual fucking casinos. And while they say you should be 18 or above to access them, making an account is incredibly trivial. There really isn't any checks before any kid or any adult, any person can drop in actual value into these accounts and basically gamble it. These are highly addictive platforms that don't do enough, in my opinion, to regulate children away from them, all right? And maybe if an adult website should have to provide some level of basic analysis that the user going to them is above the age of 18, I think that's reasonable. I don't think that there's really anything that should be against it. However, privacy should be very important. But let's go back to this bill, okay? So when you're looking into one of the most controversial sections of this bill, Section 102, Duty of Care, which is the prevention of harm to minors, a covered platform, so these are platforms like Twitter, Reddit, and again, if you go back to their, definitions, that includes online video games. So it could include something like Grand Theft Auto Online. I mean, that's 18 plus anyways, but I don't know, Roblox, that's usually Minecraft, if we're talking about a game that a minor can play. Messaging applications or video streaming services that connect to the internet that is used or is reasonably likely to be used by a minor. So I assume this section probably involves something like Twitch TV, where I think you can be over the age of 13 to access. Or no, that would be different because according to the law, the term child means an individual who's under the age of 13. So for some certain social media platforms like Twitch, I think 13 is like the cutoff. So they shouldn't reasonably be used by a minor, right? But I don't know. It's weird how this law is going to be handled, right? So a design feature is any feature or component of a covered platform that will encourage or increase the frequency, time spent, or activity of minor on the covered platforms. So that includes things like infinite scrolling or autoplay, so anything involving the algorithm that pushes you to, content, right? So let's say you're on, like, I don't know, YouTube, for instance, and you look at the recommended section. The recommended section or the autoplay for YouTube will have to factor in if any of those, possible situations are factored in. Rewards for time spent on the platform, so things like daily login rewards, notifications, personalized recommendation system, so again, the algorithm specifically, in-game purchases, or appearance-altering filters, which is also really important. Like, I read Lost to You a few weeks ago where politicians brought up like beauty filters for children were really fucking with their mental health because kids would just be like, hey, I don't look like this Barbie character, which is completely unreasonable to attain. And obviously social medias were targeting platforms like TikTok for even showing that stuff in the first place. So again, to go down, what they also mentioned something is patterns of use that indicate or encourage addiction-like behaviors by minors. So again, we're talking about dark patterns, we're talking about addictive algorithms, which I think is, again, very important to bring up, right? A platform should exercise reasonable care. So you got physical violence like online bullying and harassment of the minor, which again, very important. You should have safeguards in place so kids aren't put into harmful situations. Then you've got sexual exploitation and abuse of any minors, which again, very important. You should minimize that as much as you can. There's a lot of weird groomers on the internet. There's a lot of weird communication that you can have. You should try to limit it as much as you can. I agree. Absolutely. Promotion and marketing of narcotic drugs, which again includes tobacco, gambling, or alcohol. Again, very important to do this. Then you've got predatory, unfair, deceptive marketing practices or other financial harms. Now, I don't know what financial harms comes out to. Maybe kids can't see like the Hawk Tuah coin or something through this. I don't know. Maybe. But again, they go down to a limitation which says nothing in that subsection shall be construed to require any platform to prevent or preclude any minor from A, deliberately and independently searching for or specifically requesting content or accessing resources and information regarding the prevention or mitigations of harms described in subsection A. So this is an interesting part of the law that I'm reading, and I'm not a lawyer by any chance, but it really kind of seems that, okay, so the algorithms aren't going to present you these pretty controversial topics. But nothing will be construed to require any of these platforms to prevent or preclude any minor from accessing that information. So on one hand, platforms have to work really hard to prevent these really actual serious cases, which I think should also apply to adults, right? Like, why are we just limiting some of this shit to minors, right? Like, predatory, unfair, or deceptive marketing practices. Like, should that not just apply to adults anyways? Like, what the fuck? Physical violence, online bullying, or harassment. I mean, shouldn't you just kind of apply that to... I mean, it's just weird how they're kind of... Like, for kids, these are all bad things. For adults, we'll let social media platforms decide, right? It's wild, whatever. So the other things they have are safeguards for minors. So these are things that, again, they talk about limiting the ability for users to, or visitors to communicate with the minor, which is important, right? Like, obviously, if you're on Roblox and I have my kid on Roblox, I probably don't want my kid talking to some random person on the internet, or there should be ways to limit speaking to that child. Then you've got prevent other users or visitors, whether registered or not, from viewing the minor's personal data collected by or shared on the covered platform. Absolutely, kids should automatically have the highest levels of privacy features on these sites. But again, these aren't shocking endeavors. What you go down into when you look even further are things like age verification. Now, there's one thing about this law that I think is really important, is that it doesn't have like an age verification requirement yet. So in section 108, they literally say that they are going to have a study. So the study means that they're trying to pass this law without actually having any idea how they're going to verify if somebody's a fucking minor or not. So for instance, the Secretary of Commerce, in coordination with the FTC, so this is a whole federal thing, okay, will conduct a study evaluating the most technological feasible methods and options for developing systems to verify age at the device or operating system level. So it seems like they're going to target the actual phone themselves. They're probably going to leverage something like Face ID or something on the device to verify age. So when you look into it, they say the benefits of creating a device, right, what information may need to be collected to create this type of age verification system, the accuracy of such systems and their impact or steps to improve accessibility, and how such a system could verify age while mitigating risks to user privacy and data security and safeguarding minor personal data, emphasizing minimizing the amount of data collected and processed by covered platforms and age verification providers. So again, they talk about the technical feasibility, the impact of different age verification systems, and then not later than 1 year after the creation of enactment by this act, the agencies described in subsection A shall submit a report containing the results of the study conducted under the subsection to a Committee of Commerce, Science, and Transportation. So then you go down and you read something about this law where it's like, again, once this is all bringing down after the effective date, what they say is protections for privacy. Nothing in this subtitle, including a determination described in subsection B, shall be construed to require a covered platform to implement an age gating or age verification functionality. So it's like, at the end of the day, you're going to put people through. You're going to have a study on age verification, but then you're not going to require it. I don't understand what the effect of this law is supposed to do, other than allowing an entire federal agency to, I guess, decide what a minor can and cannot see on the internet, right? Like, this is such a weird law to read because it almost feels completely toothless the more and more I read it. And again, I'm not a lawyer. This is just me looking at this from a privacy perspective. Now, there's a write-up actually by the guys over the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and I've talked about them, pretty extensively when it comes to anything related to internet privacy. So according to the EFF, what they say is this updated bill adds one sentence to the duty of care. Nothing in this section shall be construed to allow a government entity to enforce subsection A based upon the viewpoint of users expressed by or through any speech, expression, or information protected by the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. But the viewpoint of users was never impacted by COSA's duty of care in the first place. The duty of care is a duty imposed on the platforms, not users. Platforms must mitigate the harms listed in the bill, not users, and the platform's ability to share users' views is what's at risk, not the ability of users to express those views. Adding that the bill doesn't impose liability based on user expression doesn't change how the bill would be interpreted or enforced. The FTC could still hold a platform liable for the speech it contains. Now, according to them, an actual example is if a covered platform, like Reddit for instance, hosts a forum created and maintained by users for discussion of overcoming eating disorders. So something positive, right? People do have eating disorders, people do have actual mental illnesses, and sometimes a community is important. Even though the speech contained in that forum is entirely legal, often helpful, and possibly even life-saving, the FTC could still hold Reddit liable for violating the duty of care by allowing young people to view it. The same could be true of Facebook groups about LGBT issues, or about a post with drug use that X showed a user through its algorithm. If a platform's defense were that this information is protected expression, the FTC could simply say they aren't enforcing it based on the expression of any individual viewpoint, but based on the fact that the platform allowed that design feature, so an algorithm for instance, Facebook, a group or whatever, to distribute that expression to minors. It's a superfluous carve-out for user speech, an expression that COSA never penalized in the first place. So apparently, according to them, is just passing COSA would likely result in platforms taking down protected speech and implementing age verification requirements, even if it's never enforced. The FTC could simply express the type of content they believe harms children and use the mere threat of enforcement to force platforms to comply. Now look, at the end of all this, I think reading these kind of laws, it makes me wonder just how much they're using this to protect children or implement some form of vague, laws, some sort of vague control by the federal government to, again, implement some restrictions on speech they consider to be dangerous to minors, right? Look, at the end of the day, these things can change. These things can be very fluid. It really depends on what the political situation of the country looks like at that time. And look, I'm not American, but I'll say it right now. When America sneezes, the entire world catches a cold, right? Like, at the end of the day, these kind of laws are not exclusive to just the US. I mean, even in Canada, they're kind of passing around these laws. They're mulling them about. In Australia, we talked about this. This is something that is slowly becoming a fact of the internet. This is going to be a highly regulated platform. And I think the usage of sharing around information, look, it's one thing, right? Like, it's kind of easy to sell anybody on the idea that an adult website should be limiting people from accessing them. I actually really get that. I totally understand it. The only issue I have there is privacy, right, for the information you submit, and especially enforcement, right? If the government brings these kind of rules, one thing that I find so intense about all these laws is that none of them ever address the biggest loophole, the VPNs. You know, I showed you how to purchase a VPN service with full anonymity. And again, I'm not showing this as a way for you to, again, I care about your privacy, but to think that kids aren't smart enough to figure this out, because kids are very smart. We were all kids circumventing shit all the time. So for the government to think that's not going to happen is baffling. And for them to not add those provisions is also baffling. I think there's definitely some lobbying by VPN companies. I think there's got to be some financial gain where if you implement these laws that add restrictions to the internet that can easily be circumvented by using a VPN, I have to imagine that is just profitable for these organizations. Look, kids are in danger, okay? A lot of these bills were implemented off of actual, read-ups where unfortunately children had actually died because of what they saw on TikTok, right? And it's serious. Look, I get it. I understand if you're a parent and you back these laws because you've lost your child, that is a very traumatic thing. But ultimately, having the government become the arbitrator of what you can and cannot do online and adding these insane restrictions, or at least setting the framework for them. Because if you think a law is bad now, remember, things can change as more laws get introduced down the road. You're already talking about a world where governments want to fight against things like encryption. A lot of our privacy is slowly being targeted, and children are being used as this, emotional vector to kind of pierce the veil and basically target a lot of these sites and a lot of these, information mediums we use to disseminate information between each other, right? Like, you might be an adult thinking, oh, whatever, it's just targeting minors at this point, right? But anything implementing, or talking about things like age verifications or talking about anything privacy busting is something you have to be a little worried for. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to ask how this actually protects children. Children will still use the VPN trick I showed you earlier to access these social media services or access Discord or access places where they can still be exposed to these really dangerous things. We're not actually helping children, right? We're not actually helping kids in any capacity. We're just slowly setting the framework for more internet censorship and restriction down the road. I care a lot about, the well-being of everyone, not just kids. I think adults should also be factored in when we're talking about mental well-being or anything, all right? The internet can be a beautiful place. It can also be a pretty fucking dangerous place too, right? And unfettered access can absolutely cause some serious issues for anybody that's not prepped for it. But the way that these laws are being implemented, it doesn't seem like it really is the right way to implement this. And you have to worry about going into the future when, again, you're sending your information, no matter what, even if it's a government ID or a facial recognition, you have to wonder how safe is it really when day upon day there's always a new hack that's occurring. Anyways, though, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to kind of talk about this because privacy is a huge focus on my channel. I like talking about it. I know these videos can be a fucking bit dry and boring, but I think it's worth talking about because ultimately it's more important than anything else on the internet. Okay, this is the future we're talking about. This is how we communicate. And if we need to address the safety of children, we should address the safety of children in a way that's meaningful and not a way that politicians just force through without actually thinking themselves. None of these politicians are technical savants or geniuses or understand, how their laws can so easily be circumvented, it seems. And I feel like anybody that's writing these laws, I feel like they need much more than old politicians that still don't even understand how the internet truly works, let alone other more advanced technologies. That said, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and yeah, I'm out.